Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to map Webflow Multi-Reference Fields inside of make.com. Here we go. So I made a video probably a year and a half ago now, walking you through how to map Webflow Multi-Reference Fields inside of Zapier. But since then, a couple things have changed. Firstly, I prefer to use make.com now, so we're not going to be using Zapier today. We're going to be using make.com. And secondly, Webflow has updated their API, so that video is outdated. You can't do it anymore. So today I'm going to show you the latest and greatest updated way to map Webflow multi-reference fields automatically using make.com. I know a lot of you guys out in the make.com sphere have been struggling figuring out how to do this, and it is a little tricky, and there's two main sticking points that you'll run into that I've solved, and I'll show you how to get around those two tricky aspects of this in this video. All right, so without further ado, here we go. All right, so step number one is let me just kind of show you the overview of how I have everything set up. We're going to be using Airtable in this video to kind of run kind of the infrastructure of this automation and handle all of our data. You could use Google Sheets, you could use Airtable, you could even do it manually, but I think most of you guys that are having trouble with this are using Airtable, so we're going to use that today. Okay, so let me show you how I have this set up. So inside of Webflow, I have a CMS collection called languages, okay? And essentially I just have 30 languages here. And you can see they just have a name, a unique slug, and then a unique Webflow ID right here, okay? Okay, so I have 30 languages, and they're all listed right here. The first thing I need to do is I need to get this essentially CMS collection, all the items in this CMS collection, along with their unique Webflow item IDs into essentially an Airtable index database. Okay, so I need to populate all of our 30 languages here, along with their unique Webflow IDs here, so that we can essentially reference these keys later on when we need them. So I'll show you the quickest way to do this if you don't have this already set up. But what you're going to do is you're going to come into make.com, and we're going to, let's see, list items, and then you want to create your connection, and then you want to go pick the actual collection that you want to list. So in this case, it's going to be our languages collection. All right, so I want to map my languages, and I have 30, so I want to pull in more than 2. All right, and so if I run this now, you can see that I get in all these bundles all of my 30 languages. Okay, so they're all sitting right here, and I have an item ID, which is very important, as well as the name and the slug. Okay, and then all you want to do is to get this into Airtable is we're going to go to Airtable, we're going to drop in that module, and we're going to create a record. And again, connect to Airtable, and then choose the base and table that you want to add these to. So in our case, it's going to be tutorial language, so it's going to be this database right here. And then all you want to do is you want to just map your names and your Webflow IDs. So the name of the language is this field, and then my Webflow ID, very importantly, I'm going to add it between quotation marks. All right. So just like that. So quotation mark, item ID, quotation mark. All right, and then I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to run this bad boy. And you can see we just got all 30 of our languages, and then we're going to iterate through each of our bundles as we add them to our table here in Airtable. So you can see these are being added right now as we speak. And perfect. Okay, so it looks like we've got all 30. Let's clean this up here for a second. And so now you can see we have each of our 30 languages along with their unique Webflow ID, which again was listed right here. Now, obviously you could do this manually, but you might have 100, 200 plus items here in your CMS collection. You don't want to do this manually. So just a little prep work here. Now we're all set up and good to go in Airtable. What do we do next? Okay, now step number 2 is I'm going to come back into Webflow. I'm going to show you kind of what our goal is here. So here's our languages. But what we're doing today is we have another CMS collection here called businesses. And inside our business CMS collection, we have a multi-reference field right here called languages. And this is the field that we're going to be talking about in this video. And so you can see as part of this multi-reference field inside of the CMS collection, we can choose as many of these 30 languages as we want. Okay. Now you can obviously do it manually, but we want to do this automatically, which is what this video is about. Okay, so what do we need to do in order to, start updating this automatically instead of having to click through these manually? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to build out a second Airtable database here, second Airtable table. And essentially what we're going to do is we are going to list the item in our Webflow CMS collection that we want to update. So in this case, we're going to be updating our Disney CMS item. All right. And so I'm just going to go grab this item ID. Again, you can do this automatically, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to do it manually. So you're just going to paste that in there. So that's going to be the item that we're going to update. And then what we need to do is we need to add in a linked field, okay, or a linked record here. And we're going to link to our language index that we just set up. And I'm going to hit create field. And I'm going to toggle on this Webflow ID because I want to add that in. And so you can see I just added in 2 new fields here to this Disney Webflow item. And now the idea here is I can choose essentially any of the languages that we have included in our list of 30 here. And when I do so, automatically we will have the Webflow unique language item ID populated out here in quotation marks. So you can see I have 3 here. If I remove Italian, you know, we come down to 2. And so this right here, these unique Webflow item IDs for languages surrounded by quotation marks are what we're going to feed actually into the API call that we're going to use to update our multi-reference field in Webflow. Okay. So I'm just going to choose 3 here for this example. All right. And that's step number 2. Okay. Step number 3 is we need to actually make the API call to Webflow so that we can map our Webflow multi-reference fields. And in order to do that, we need to pull some of this data outside of our Airtable base. Okay, so we need to pull in our unique Webflow item ID, or in this example, this Disney CMS item. This is the item we're going to be updating. And then I also need to pull out of Airtable our 3 unique language Webflow IDs, which is what we're going to feed into our Disney multi-reference field right here. Okay. So in order to do that, we're going to come into make.com and we're just going to drop in an Airtable get a record module. And then you want to link to your account. And then inside of our tutorial summary table, we are going to just search for the correct record. Now you can do all this dynamically in your automation, but for this video, I'm just going to, literally pull this in manually here. And so I'm just going to, choose the right one here. Make sure I got the right one. So 66B. Should be good. Let me make sure that's the right one. So I'll hit run. Okay, cool. So I'm pulling in that line out of Airtable. All right, good. And now let's write our actual API call. All right, so we're going to drop in a Webflow make an API call module. And then what we're going to do is you're going to connect to your Webflow account. And then inside your URL, and I'll have all this kind of linked down in the description below for you. You want to do /collections, / and then we want to plug in our collection ID, the collection ID of the collection that we're updating. So in this case, we want to update our businesses collection, okay? Not our languages collection, but our businesses collection. And so I'm just going to go to settings here, and I'm just going to copy this collection ID because that is the collection that we want to map our languages to, or our multi-reference fields to. All right. Then / items, and then finally / and then this is where we actually map dynamically our Webflow item ID that we want updated. Okay. And in this case, it's going to be this dynamic field right here. Okay. So again, that is our Disney item ID. So if I come to businesses, Disney, this item ID right here is the one we want to update. So it ends in DE8. Okay. And we can see here that we are mapping DE8. Okay. All right. So that looks good there. So that's your URL field. All right. Method is going to be patch. And then we're going to add 2 headers. The first one is accept with a value of application /JSON. And the second item is content type with a value of application/JSON. So add those bad boys in. And then we're going to come down here and actually write our API call. Okay. And I'll have this listed down in the description below for you so you can just copy it in. But essentially what we're doing here is we're going to update our field data, which is just the latest Webflow API's name for all of our custom fields inside of our CMS collection. So we're going to update our field data. And what field inside of our field data are we going to update? Well, our languages spoken field. Okay. Now, very importantly, this field right here is going to be unique for you. This right here is going to be the name of the collection that holds your multi-reference items. Okay, so in our example, we want to go grab the name of our languages CMS collection with our 30 languages, not our business one, but the one that actually holds all of our multi-reference field items. So in this case, our languages. Now, it could be as easy as just going to settings and grabbing this collection URL, and that will be the name of your key here. But sometimes it's not. So if this doesn't work for you, what you want to do is you want to make sure you have the right name here for the field that you're updating. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So you can see here that my languages collection, the URL or the slug is utility-languages. All right, but that won't work for me. As you can see, I have languages-spokens as my key name. Why am I doing that? Well, essentially, sometimes Webflow, if you make a collection, then you change the name later and you update the slug, what is in the Webflow API does not change from your first entry or what you originally called it, essentially. So if you're getting errors here, this drove me crazy for like an hour. I was like, what is going on? Why isn't this working? Well, Webflow had kept the original slug of what I named this CMS collection, which was languages spoken. So in order to find this for you, just to double check, what you're going to do is you're going to come to this URL here, which I'll have linked down below. This is essentially just the Webflow API documentation. And we're going to come down to get a collection item. And then you want to actually log in here. You can log into your Webflow account and give it your API key. And then what you can do is you can actually make kind of test calls here to the API and you can see what everything's called. And so what you can do is if you put in your collection ID, which is not going to be the collection ID of your languages, but of the businesses, and I'll show you this in right now. So go grab the collection ID of your overall collection, in this case, my businesses. I'm going to paste that in here. And then I'm going to go grab the item ID for my one of these, just so I can see what the field is called. So come to businesses, and I'll just choose this one. And I'll go grab item ID. And I paste this in here. And then I hit try it. Well, what we can see is we can scroll down now and see what each of our fields are actually called. So you can see I have my language field here as languages-spokens. And so that's what I'm going to use in my API call. Okay, so double check that your name is correct when you do this. If you're getting errors, that's probably the main reason that it's happening. All right, so languages-spokens. And then what I need to do now is feed in my actual, language IDs. Okay, so I need to feed in this field right here with all these quotations. All right, so I'm going to feed that in here. Now, this is not going to work for you. Okay, and I'll show you this. If I run this right now, we're going to get an error. Okay. And we can see that if I go to my input bundles, we can see here that it looks okay. We're updating our field data and our languages spoken. It looks like we're feeding in, all three of our unique IDs here. Okay, so it looks like it's okay. But it's not, because when we are pulling out of Airtable from a linked record like this, this is not coming out of Airtable as a string. Okay, And so it will not work properly with the Webflow API because this isn't a string. It's like an object or something. It's goofy. It's weird. And so what we need to do here is we need to come back into our API call, and we need to add a toString formula. And we're just going to move this up into that formula, if I can get it in there. Come on. All right, let's choose it again. Okay. I'll delete this one. All right, so we're going to convert this field right here into a string. All right, so is that going to work? Well, let's see. I'm going to run it again, and no, I get an error again. And this time, if I show you my input bundles, I'll show you what's going on. Now it's a string, but you can see we've got two little square brackets there. And at the end, we've got two square brackets. We don't want that. We don't want that. We just want one square bracket. And so we need to remove one of those. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is we're going to make one last change to our API call here. Nope. All right, and so what we're going to do is around our toString, we're going to do a replace formula. And what are we going to replace? Well, we're going to replace the square bracket with an empty string. Okay, and I'll close that off. And then lastly, we're going to replace one more time. This time we're going to replace the closed square bracket, and make sure I'm doing the right one. Yep. With an empty string. Okay. So it looks like this. Zoom in here for you. Okay. So again, we're stringifying our list of Webflow item IDs. And then we're just removing the forward square bracket with an empty string, and then our backward square bracket with an empty string. Okay, so I'm gonna hit run, and now it went through, and now it went through. And you can see now, I'll show you what our input looked like. You can see now we just had one square bracket and one square bracket right there. Okay, so that's good. And the whole thing inside there is a string. So it took. So we're looking good. So now if I come to my, if I refresh my Webflow CMS collection, and I go to Disney, which is the one we updated. You can see now I've got all three of my languages mapped automatically to my Webflow multi-reference field. So the last thing I'll do here is I'll just publish the item automatically. Okay. And you can see I have stage changes right now, but if I want to publish this live, I will just connect a publish item here, and then I'll just map my ID, which will be, let's see, and we'll just use, yeah, this should be it right here. Yep. Okay. And so then we'll publish it. So I'll do it again. And now I'll refresh it, and this should be published with our languages. Okay, cool. So now it's published, and we've got all three of our languages right there, which we have mapped over here in Airtable. So that is how you map Webflow multi-reference fields inside of Make.com. Again, there's two main sticking points that you're going to run into. One being, make sure you have the name of your CMS collection that you're pulling from that contains your multi-reference items. Make sure you have that name correct. Again, you can go to the Webflow API documentation and see actually what that name is, what the key is that you'll need to make your API call. And then two, you're going to need to stringify your linked field out of Airtable. So remember, this is not technically a string for some reason out of Airtable. It's a lookup field. And so in order to get around that, you need to stringify your result inside of Make.com. Another way that you could get around this, and I tried this, is you could actually set up an automation inside of Airtable over here. You could set up an automation so that every time there's an update to this field, you essentially just add it to a text field, but you only have limited amount of automations in a free Airtable account. So I chose not to show that. The easiest way to do it is the way I showed you, and the cheapest. So anyways, if you guys like this video, go down and smash that like button for me. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing. That'd be awesome. If you have any questions or any concerns or issues, get down in the comments and let me know. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for being here and all the support. You guys are the best, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.